I'm Ali. I'm one of the physios from treatmyachilles.com. Treat My Achilles is a specialist service for Achilles tendon pains and problems, and we offer some assessments and also rehabilitation programs for anyone who is suffering with these issues. If you'd like to find out more, please have a look at the information below all our YouTube videos, and it'll tell you how to book an appointment or have a look around our website. Today is the second part of our series on talking about which muscles we need to strengthen when we're doing running or running-based sports. We talked about in our first episode what different muscle groups are used in running and in sprinting. Today I want to talk about why strength training is really important. One of the things we know from looking at a very recent systematic review, which is where an author has spent their time collating all of the good quality research about sports injuries and sports and how that strength training can relate to preventing those injuries. And in that systematic review, they came with three quite interesting conclusions. The first, doing strength training on a regular basis alongside your running or running-based sport can reduce sports injury by about a third. And when we look at overuse injuries, which are really quite common with runners, so this is an injury that happens without an accident or an incident, and this would therefore include an Achilles tendinopathy, doing strength training on a regular basis can actually reduce that injury risk by nearly half. One of the third conclusion that they brought up from this research paper was actually they didn't really correlate stretching with a reduction in sports injuries, but there was a suggestion that more research was needed to look into this. So they really emphasised the fact that strength training is important. There hasn't been a lot of other research with runners to show particularly why strength training would reduce your injury risk in runners, but it makes sense to us when we look at the research that we do have about people with injuries have weaknesses in certain muscle groups, particularly the glutes as we discussed before, and the quads and the calf muscles, and sometimes the hamstrings and the hip flexors. If we have weakness in those muscle groups when we have these injuries, it would make sense that these muscles are not robust enough to cope with the demands of the sports or the activities that we've asked it to do. And if this happens over a period of time where we're continuing with our sport and our body's not robust enough to cope, then we start to develop an injury. It then makes sense if we create more robustness in our bodies, which we know happens with strength training, where we can make muscles stronger and we can make our joints more stable, and we can increase the strength of our tendons and the power and the force that we're generating when we're doing these activities by doing certain types of strength training. We then know that we can get people back to activity. They're more robust, they can then return to their sports and the things that they do, and also progress and do more than that by keeping up with their strength regime. So they looked at a few different types of regimes for runners. They looked at lots and lots of repetitions with very little weights. They looked at lots of high level weight, so increasing the weight with low amounts of repetitions. And they looked at power, so reasonably heavy weight, little amount of repetitions, but moving quickly whilst doing those activities. And it was found that the two where there was higher weight and lower repetition were actually more effective when increasing performance and improving performance in runners. And it improved those in different ways. One of the ways was making your running economy more efficient. Now that means you are able to run for further and therefore your calorie use is more efficient. The second one was about how fast people were running, and it increased their speed in time trials. Now that particularly was over a longer period of time, over a 40-week program when they noticed this. When I speak to runners and I talk to them about doing some high weight, low rep exercises, people are quite concerned about getting quite bulky and really bulking up and becoming more difficult to then run. And in this long study of over 40 weeks, it was shown actually this didn't happen. People remained lean, but they increased their power and also their strength in those muscles, so they started to run faster. So you're better off doing some strength training 2 or 3 times a week at increasing the amount of weight you're holding when you're doing these exercises for less repetitions, and then having a rest and repeating that maybe 3, maybe 5 sets. Now, I'm being a bit vague about which exercises are better and ones that we would suggest, but I know Mareka has written some blogs on this, and again, we can attach those links to that in the information below. What I'm loath to do is give you particular exercises, as different people start at different levels, and it may be that we have to start with higher repetitions to groove a movement pattern, to get people used to doing weight training if you haven't done it much before, and to start to increase your ability to do that work before we start increasing high weight, and therefore it is different for different people, so it's not a one recipe for everyone. The things I want you to take home is that it's really important to strengthen the calf complex, which fits with the Achilles, the hamstring, the quadriceps and the gluteal muscles, and if you're sprinting, hip flexors as well. It's important to look at low repetition, high weight exercises 2 or 3 times a week, consistently for a long period of time, and that will help your running economy, maybe your running speeds, and could prevent injuries, because we know there is a correlation between strength and injury, and a correlation between strength training and less injuries. Thank you very much for your time, but goodbye.